Well, tech and finance leaders, policymakers, innovators, and investors from across Africa recently gathered here in Washington to discuss the future of financial technology. The discussion focused on financial inclusion and new technologies in payments and remittances. To tell us more about the discussion, I'm joined in studio by Leland Rice, co-founder and CEO of Dedalus Global. Dedalus Global is a boutique investment consultancy with networks across Africa and the Middle East. Mr. Rice, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you for having me.
So first, just share with us a little bit why it was so important to have this discussion at this time here in Washington.
Well, I'm glad you asked that question. I was part of a group of people who, like many people, really believe in the transformative potential of financial technology, specifically for African economies and for African people. But we saw potential challenges to that transformative potential, and that being a lack of coordination and understanding among the really disparate elements that are sort of driving this tech revolution. You know, bankers and tech entrepreneurs don't always speak the same language. Policymakers and regulators don't always understand the tech. Venture capital investors and private equity investors also don't always understand the unique market dynamics of African economies. And so we wanted to create a space where all of those different elements could come together, and we wanted to create a Pan-African event to do a bit of comparing and contrasting what different countries were doing. Washington, D.C. Proved to be an ironic good choice for that Pan-African event because a lot of leaders, especially people from central banks in Africa, were in town for the World Bank and IMF meeting. So we produced that summit.
On the side of bureaucracy, do you get the sense that the fellows that are running governments understand that technology is coming at us rather fast and that they need to create the infrastructure that will facilitate the utilization of this technology to facilitate economic development?
I think some governments do, and more than others. It depends which governments we're talking about. I think there's a general realization, especially following the rapid uptake of mobile money in Kenya, for example, where today now 80% of people use M-Pesa, their main mobile money product. I think there's a realization following that success across a lot of jurisdictions that this technology has a lot of power and it's coming very, very fast, and it's time to sort of understand and get on board. There are certain economies that are and governments that are more interested in creating conducive ecosystems for this type of innovation.
Mm-hmm. In terms of reception from the consumers themselves, what do you get from the ground? You've been across Africa. How easily are people adapting to this new use of technology to especially transact when it comes to businesses?
The uptake has been really, really high. I mean, really rapid. We talk about Fintech, financial technology in the US, and we talk about products that make our lives a little bit more convenient. We talk about Fintech in African economies that have lacked the branch networks of banks and ATMs and other infrastructures that have kept a lot of people unbanked. All of a sudden, when you have a technological solution to that, through phones, particularly smartphones, the adoption rate is much higher than you see in other parts of the world. So it's really exciting to see that rapid adoption.
Mm-hmm. So realistically, though, can you streamline the use of this? I mean, you go to the marketplace here, sometimes you feel like there's confusion. There's like so much that is happening. Every day somebody's coming up with a new app, a new system. How do you streamline that, especially in Africa? Do you form some kind of a different, kind of a regulatory kind of body, or what do you do?
That's a great question. I think that's a question that a lot of central banks and other communication regulators are grappling with right now. How do you create a system that doesn't hamstring that growth, that facilitates innovation, but at the same time has some sort of control and it doesn't allow the bad actors to proliferate, for example?
Yeah, and so what do you see happening in the future of Africa, especially as far as financial transactions are concerned? Do you see people moving away from traditional banking and perhaps bill pay systems and just go high tech and go mobile?
Yeah, it's tempting to say that. The payment service providers in Africa have huge economies of scale. Paga in Nigeria, for example, has 12 million customers. That's more than most banks in Nigeria, more than most banks in the world. But I think it would be naive to think that those payment apps are the end all and be all. Yeah. I think banks will rapidly start to adopt those technologies and integrate them and build out digital first banking models.
Yeah. Well, Leland, thank you very much for sharing this with us, and we look forward to talking to you some other time.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Well, Leland Rice is co-founder and CEO at Dedalus Global.